I was asked to give a presentation about the Berlin experience with improving energy efficiency in buildings, with a special focus on auditing and contractor certification. But before I go to the subject, auditing and certification, let me explain a little bit more in detail what is the Berlin building stock. Of course, we do have to face the same problem as every city around here, that we have an existing building stock with a lot of residential buildings who are not really good in shape. So we do have more than 300,000 residential units, and we have an average heat use per 1990 coming from 182 kilowatt hours per square meter, and we have to go. This is our energy concept for 2020, which has in mind to reduce the CO2 emissions in total up to 40%. We need to have 150 kilowatt hours per square meters. How to reach it? Of course, as mentioned before, we do have a very strong legal framework given by the European Commission, by the European Union, and by the German national government. But what to do on a federal level like Berlin? We do have, for example, legal obligations for all residential buildings, for all non-residential buildings as well, to implement energy performance certificates. Why do I stress this point? This point is important because with a well-done energy performance certificate, which has to be shown at the front door of a, for example, public building, we try to raise awareness for energy efficiencies within clients, within owners of the buildings. And this is obligatory for all the buildings as well in Berlin. And we do have, and this is the auditing and certification point behind, we have behind that an advice of energy saving measures which are given by energy experts. And these energy experts, for example, are architects, engineers, and so on. They have to be listed, they have to be certificate, and they have to calculate on certain rules like the DNN standards we do have as well in Germany. If we look again on the building stock, we have to be aware that we do have as well non-residential buildings for services, trade and commerce. And after the world was coming down, we had an increase in office spaces, and with this increase of office spaces, we have an increase on heat usage since 1990. Now we have around about 40 gigawatt hours, which is needed for heat and for hot water in these buildings. What can we do in these buildings? I learned as well from my Italian colleague that Germany is leading in this field. Yes, we are, but we all know it's not so easy on the city level to bring in new regulations, own regulations. So as well in Berlin, we are focusing more or less on voluntary agreements. For example, we are leading in the EU-based green building program, where there are additional, on a voluntary base, requirements for building owners to be better than 25% than the standard is. Standard is given by law. And now we do have 17 certificates bestowed in Berlin, and this means that Berlin is under the top 3 through the capitals in Europe in this special field. Coming last to the public building sector, we do have 6,000 public use buildings with a lot of energy costs. What to do? First of all, I would say the public body for itself has to go ahead. We, as company, we are consulting the Berlin Senate Department for Urban Development to do a self-commitment. And they did. So now they have a functional specification document for new buildings, for erection of new buildings, and for retrofit of existing buildings. As well, we did in Berlin some implementing measures. As mentioned yesterday by my colleague Cornelia Poschka, we are let's say, leading in the field of energy-saving partnerships, which is a PPP model, which is done around the world, but we are leading in Berlin with 1,300 public buildings under contract. What is the certification behind that? Because I was asked, what is the certification needed for contractors? We in Berlin and in Germany, we decided to have not a special fixed certification on contractors in this field. Why? Because we do have very good and we set very good procurement rules. And under the procurement law, you can do a lot of good things and you do not need an additional certification for the market, which is expensive for both sides, for the government as well for the companies who have to certificate. And in this auditing, we focus on capability, on expertise, on standards, of course, and creditworthiness of these PPP models. Last but not least, let me give you an idea what we are doing on the low-hanging fruit side. Because if we are talking about refurbishment of existing buildings, bringing new windows and so on, it's expensive and you have to convince a lot of different parties around the building. If you're more or less focusing on the energy supply side, we have to do and we can do a lot of. For example, on the CHP base, which means that we generate heat and electricity in parallel with an efficiency input-output ratio of more than 95%. You may say, this guy is talking about heating systems. We, in the south, we do not need so much heat. We are suffering for cooling. Why not combine this idea of CHP to combine with absorption chillers? This is possible, and to bring on more solar energy as well into the system. So what we are doing, we are not on the very sunny side of life in Berlin, but we do have some sun, and we use the sun through solar thermal energy, which comes in addition to, for example, natural gas-fired boilers or biogas-fired boilers. And we are now working and establishing hybrid system, means CHP and combined with PV on the roof and electricity storage as well in the home. So with these systems, you are able to cut down CO2 emissions for the supply of a building up to 100%. Why is this important and why I'm stressing this? Because it's quite easy to bring in. You have to convince the owner of the building, the landlord normally, and with these data and with these costs, because it's cost efficient, you can convince these people. This is what I just mentioned, a regeneration. In Berlin, it is combined with a CHP. Maybe in Hong Kong and other cities in the more south, you can combine this with solar thermal. Last but not least, I'd like to show you just a very, very new project we did 2 months ago and opened this. This is a refurbishment of a 130 unit block, which is erected in 1950, which now came in with a central of heating and water, with 3 condensing boilers based with a CHP unit, which, as I mentioned, the PV on the roof, and with the insulation of the building facade, the ceiling of the basement, and the windows. And what I like to stress, it was able to lower with this very cost-based refurbishment the CO2 emission up to 61%, which means that the operation costs, which directly inflicts the tenants in these buildings, as well with a lowering of 63. And this makes it attractive for landlords and for tenants, and this is the key factor of success. If we, and therefore we going, if we want to increase the modernization rate of the existing building stock up to 3%, to speak frank, nowadays we have a renovation or modernization rate only 0.5%. So We want to enforce this, and therefore we need all these good examples I tried to explain in the last 11 minutes. Thank you.